So I suppose it would be strange if they're just all of a sudden, oh, here pops in Didier. And they're like, wait, who are you? Like, how do you appear to them? I wonder. Are you just show up in the forest and say, hey, just want to let you know, by the way, I mean, do you ever get that understanding from them, like where you're coming from? Welcome to the Create Happy Now podcast, dedicated to helping you start your journey to discover true happiness. Join me, your host, Susan Blanton, weekly as we explore the transformation stories and words of wisdom from our masters of happiness with tips you can start applying today to create happy now. Hey, this is Susan Blanton with the Create Happy Now podcast. And today I have on my show Didier Koffi. He is a ghost whisperer, which is just so exciting to talk about. He helps families and people get together with their friends and families who may have passed away. And he also helps those who have passed away cross over if they have not. So can you explain that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Susan. As a ghost whisperer, I came to understand very quickly the difference between dying and actually being into the light. So if you think of the dying is what we're all familiar with. Have anybody who had a loved one who passed away has witnessed what it's like to be next to a person who's pretty much dying. His corporal body loses its life energy, and they're clinically declared dead. That's not the end of the journey. What I've come to discover is once that happens, there is a very profound part of each one of us, call it our soul, our spirit, that endures. Our consciousness, sometimes is referred to as that, continues past the death of the body. And there is a time of transition where that consciousness, that soul or that spirit is in between realms, because we all belong to different realms of existence. And I think many traditions, different spiritualities or religious traditions talk about that. Christianity, they call it heaven, right?
Yeah.
In other cultures will have different names for it. But the concept of going into the light is similar to that. It's the path where you actually find yourself rejoined with our creator. I call it source, to keep it neutral to any religious beliefs. Yeah. Source will be the ultimate creator of all things. And after you die, there is a time when you can actually be reconnected with source. And when you get reconnected with source, it's that crossing into the light. So it's possible that people die and go straight into the light.
Okay.
Very, very quickly. And it's also possible that people die and get stuck in between our reality, so the life that we know as ordinary humans, and source realm, which is also the realm of the angels. If people are familiar with the concepts of angels and guardian angels and guides and master guide and ascended masters, they all work with source. So it's a different level, a different realm. And you could be stuck in between. And when you're stuck in between, sometimes you do it on purposefully because you want to still care for the people that you've left behind on earth. Or sometimes you just are not aware of what's happening to you. You are really lost. It's like being in limbo. You do not understand what happened to you. You do not understand that you're dead. You do not understand that you're in between realms. So I can help people who are stuck like that move actually into the light, reconnect with soul.
So I have lots of questions about all of that that maybe the listeners want to know. So when they are stuck, or can it be by choice that maybe they're not wanting to move on just yet? So is there a choice, or is it not a choice?
It is a choice. That's the rule number one: free will. That free will thing is really very serious. It's like a prime directive of all creation. Free will. Source is not gonna force you to come back to itself. You have to choose that.
Okay.
So you have the freedom to choose to go back to source or to not go back to source. So when people choose not to go back to source, they're it's okay to do that, but they're gonna be kind of in between worlds. So there is some things they can do in that state of in between worlds. They can communicate with, still be able to communicate with, their families and loved ones who are living in our realm. They can actually interact sometimes with that realm by moving objects and interfering a lot of time with electrical systems. Is one of the very typical manifestation that they have, is interfering with electrical systems to make themselves known or heard or seen. So yeah, and it's one part of reality that is apparently a decision somebody can make for themselves.
Do you think more people that are in this situation are more because they're stuck rather than by choice?
Or the ones who are stuck and it's not a choice, really, it's a lot of time that has to do with a traumatic death, an untimely traumatic death, or a death that has a lot of pain and suffering around it.
Mm.
A lot of suicide people find themselves in that realm of in between realms,
Okay.
um, and I've run into quite a lot of those individuals who took their own lives and found themselves in limbo, not really understanding truly what they had done to themselves. Because a lot of times suicide happens as a traumatic, as part of a traumatic experience. People who take their own lives, it's not a natural thing for someone to take your own life. It's you do it as almost as an act of desperation or as an act of I want to end the pain.
Yeah.
And somebody who's been in so much pain wants to end it, goes into this suicide mode, very likely can find themselves in limbo. It's not a natural way to transition between your human life and being back.
And why would someone who made the choice to stay back before they go into the light, why would they choose to do that rather than go into the light right away?
Yes. A lot of time that happens with loved ones, like a father or mother who still has a very strong sense of responsibility for their children, or
Mm.
anybody they were taking care of, their grandchildren, or sometimes they want their other sibling. And they will realize they have enough awareness or consciousness active when they die, that they make that choice. They say, oh, they will definitely hear the call of souls that says, do you want to come back to me? And they will say, can I have some time to take care of my daughter, my son, or my grandkids, or my brother before I go? So I can maybe send a message to them or share a particular important thing that I didn't get a chance to share with them before I die. And they
Okay.
will make that kind of choice.
Oh,
It's
that
tough.
makes a lot of sense. That was going to be my next question. So if they do choose to stay in this uh middle realm, um, can they then cross over when they're ready? Like so what would be the difference between someone who's stuck and they can't seem to figure out how to move on, and someone who's chosen to stay back but they know how to move on? Why is someone stuck and someone kind of knows how to
Yes,
move on?
yes, yes. A lot of time, so if somebody make a conscious choice, it's a choice that they have made because they were actually given the opportunity to cross, and they understood pretty much very well what it meant. It means that, oh, you're gonna go to a new realm of existence, where a lot of time what you can do is a little bit different than what you would do if you're in between realms. You have less access to the common world that we live in if when you are back into source. And you can be reincarnated also. This is another topic we may want to touch if you want to
That's
go
next.
there. But, but it's you know pretty much what your path is. You know the process. You're aware of it. maybe you've done it many times before, and then you're at a point where you're like, yeah,
Oh.
I've done this before. I know how it works. I'm not confused. But for those who find themselves stuck, they forgot the process. They can't remember it for one reason or another.
Mm.
They don't realize that there is a physical, material world, and there is a soul, angelic realm over there. They completely lost that knowledge for temporarily. It can come back to them, but in that moment of being in limbo, or when their life came out of them, they
Mhm.
forgot the process. They forgot that this is a possibility, and somebody has to come to remind them of that. A lot of time it has to be through an emotional connection.
And those seem to be the ones that manifest as a ghost,
Mhm.
that people seem to have experiences, either as a voice, or they may just see them coming down the stairs, or you just kind of see them in the kitchen every morning, or whatever. And it usually is a place where they passed, right? Or I guess they can also be connected to some meaningful object
Yes.
also.
Oh yeah.
Can you explain that?
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you two examples of a place. So something that I experienced recently during the pandemic. So I was living on the property that was shared. So there are three families sharing a big property somewhere in San Diego County. And one of the families lost a member. Very loving, very caring, amazing woman to breast cancer. And she battled it for several years. And during the pandemic, in the year 2020, 2020 actually, the very beginning of the pandemic, her battle with cancer was lost, and there was all kinds of crazy things going on with the virus. So she had a really hard time, and she passed. She stayed on the property that we were all, the three families sharing that property. And
Wow.
there was a particular bench so the property was big enough that there was a creek and a waterfall in the background. It actually had natural setting, a lot of land, creek, a waterfall, and a bench. And that was our favorite place. Even when she was sick from her cancer, she would go and sit down for maybe 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever her body could handle. Sit at that bench, watch the waterfall, hear the sound of the creek and the birds and the natural light. When she died, she was there. That's the first place she went back. Instead of going into the light, she went back to the bench at the creek. That place had this very strong emotional connection
Yeah.
to her. It was her favorite place in the whole wide world. And I happened to be somebody who also liked to go on that bench every now and then and connect with nature.
Uh-huh.
So I felt her presence. I was like, oh boy, she's here. And
Did,
I had to go through facilitation again. At the time, I was at the very beginning also of my practice as a Ghost Whisperer. So I called for somebody who was very, very well trained and had many, many, many years of experience. It's like, my friend who died, he's here in the garden by the creek. She hasn't moved on into the light. She sits there and she's waiting for something to happen. And then I was given a chance to go through the ritual to help her realize that, hey, you have died. You are no longer just trying to fight the cancer. Unfortunately, that battle was lost. It's time for you to move on into the light. And she recognized me, and she understood my words, and she remembered the process that, oh, I have to go into the light. I'm like, yes. And then she saw the light and she walked into it, and she was, reconnected with source. So that was a place, but also, a very particular setting that she was connected to.
did anybody
Objects.
ever see her there, or did just her presence was felt?
I felt her presence. Yeah. Um, her she was married. Her husband may have seen her, but he was so emotionally, um, you know, still recovering from the loss of his beloved, that he wouldn't want to talk about anything like that. He really wanted to have his own grieving time, and I didn't push it
Yeah.
on him. I thought about it, and I was advised by that lady who was a very experienced ghost whisperer. She says, no, 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 don't put it on him. Let him go through his grieving process. But I was pretty much the only one on the property who figured out that she was there.
Okay. Okay.
as a
Now,
ghost.
there's lots of people that have seen um, or experienced, or maybe there's houses that tend to have um, more people staying back than others. And, that usually is attractive to those ghost hunters.
Yeah.
Um, so they usually have these um, detectors where they're able to hear them talk through. Um, can you explain why they use those tools, and what is real? Because some people are watching shows and they're
Yes.
thinking, yeah, this is real, or they're skeptical, or so can you walk us through what that really is?
Oh, absolutely. And it again, because I was telling you earlier that they really like to interact with electrical systems. Because electricity, so I was trained as a scientist and engineer, so I understand the whole physics and the math behind electricity. Electricity is waves, and it has different frequencies. Sound is a range of frequencies. Light is another one. Radio waves is another one. Um, so when you are in between, like your ghost, like that, you actually your consciousness, if you want, or your essence that still survives, is also made of that same light frequency at a different range. But because you are a light frequency, you have access to electrical fields, which are very physical, very real. A magnet uses electromagnetic to move an object, right? If you see lightning, this is, electric fields interacting and moving electrons from one place to the other. So they do have access to that. It's one of the easiest things they can manipulate is electricity. So the typical thing you see on those ghost hunting or shows is they have those recording devices that really is nothing else than an electric system that can record the variations of the electric waves onto some device.
Okay.
And the girls will use that. The voice is a very typical one where they will ask questions. So the ghost hunter will go and ask a question to the place. They will enter this room and say, what is your name? But we don't hear anything, right? When it's live, at the time when they ask the question, and they will ask different questions. And then they'll review the recording. And when they review the recording, they will hear a voice. They will hear,
That's right. I always
yeah,
wondered why they could hear it after it was recorded, but not at the time.
yes, because they interact straight through the electrical system rather than going through the sound waves that get captured by the microphone and modulate the electrical signal and then it gets recorded. They go straight. They don't need to go through the sound wave. We do, humans, when we're still
Yeah.
alive, right? They don't need that. They go
Our
straight.
ears aren't electrical devices, right?
Yes,
Okay.
they go straight to the recording. And then they manipulate that recording, and that's how you can hear a response. That's the phenomenon. They can enter, it's like they bypass um,
Okay.
directly into the recording device because they're electrical and that is electrical. So there's an easy way for the two to interact with each other. That's why the voice gets heard after the question is got and they review the recording.
Okay, well that makes sense. Now, some of them have had like they sense cold spots.
Yeah.
Is what's that about?
Oh, yeah. Again, guess what? Heat and cold is still a wave frequency. Infrared is the frequency of heat. So anything that is cold or hot is, again, another frequency of electrical signals, a different frequency range. Same thing, when you feel something that's really warm, what they do is they spike the intensity of the infrared frequency. The same thing, if you can get closer to a flame or a fire, what's doing, you're getting closer to an area of space where the infrared frequency is much stronger. And that's when you feel it hot. Oh my God, this is hot.
Yeah.
Same thing happens. You can bring the frequency down. When you bring the frequency of infrared down, that feels cold to you. That's how they feel. Oh my God, there's a cold chill that sometimes is a way for a ghost to make themselves known that they're there, either through a hot, uh, you know, a hot spot or a cold spot.
And it probably is easier for the cold, since that seems to be more of people having that experience where they say, oh, it was really cold right here in this spot. And they also are able to like flicker lights and turn things off, or
Oh, yeah.
things aren't working.
Witness that with Philly. Yeah.
Now, some have the ability to like throw a book or open a door or shut a door. Why do some have very weak ability to communicate and others are, just really very demonstrative with the physical aspects that are very disturbing to people? And it was funny. I remember a friend of mine whose father had passed away, and they had a TV that was unplugged. They were going to get rid of it, and it turned on.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
You're like, there is no way. She said, but she goes, I knew it was my dad because he was all about his TV. But yeah, could you explain like how like some are kind of weak and some are just really bold and wanting to be known, their presence?
Yes, it's really what I've come to discover and understand. One of the driver of the intensity of the interaction with the physical world that the ghosts can have with the physical world is very connected to their emotional state.
Mm.
Emotions have tremendous power. Think about the power of love, right? It's a
Yeah.
very potent emotion. And when you go to when you leave your body, you still are an emotional creature, an emotional being. That's why people talk about the love of God, right?
Yeah.
Don't lose your emotions. They are still there and they are pretty strong. And the strength of your emotions also can amplify your ability to interact with more physical kind of, of realms. To give you an example, I was doing a session in this very room. I do it usually every Saturday morning, once a week. Um, and I had found a ghost that was willing to cross over. It was a woman, but she had I think, a very traumatic death. She died by fire.
Oh.
And I had a candle. I lit a few candles around this place when I do the ceremony to kind of create a very safe, inviting, loving, nurturing environment so they feel safe and they can actually cross over.
Yeah.
That woman, unfortunately, was still living the trauma of her death by fire. And when I started asking her to come forth and cross, one of my candles went like a firework. Like,
Whoa.
flame went from this height to this height with smoke coming out of it. And I was like, oh my God, he's still traumatized by it. And I had to run, grab the candle, throw it into the sink, pour some water to stop it. The whole candle not turned into some kind of a bomb.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
that never happened with any other. The same candle has been used many, 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 many times. It never
Mhm.
happened before. So I was like, okay, we're dealing with trauma. And I realized that she's not at peace here. She's not ready to cross. So it
Mm.
took me another 5 to 6 minutes of trying to have a conversation with her, bring her emotional state down so she'd stop turning my candles into bombs and burning my house.
Gosh.
But that did,
Wow.
when the emotional state came down and she felt peaceful and safe, and then she understood that the death that she experienced is a past event. It's not, she doesn't have to relive it anymore. She conquered that. She's moving to another better place. Then all the energies in the house went down and the candles were acting normally.
Mm.
So it's that power of your emotions that really gives you the ability to truly interact. If you're a ghost and you're an angry ghost, or you're very sad and very depressed ghost, you have a lot of emotional power to manifest and move things in the real world.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So do so some of them know that they're dead and they're stuck, and some of them don't know that they're dead.
Yes. Yes,
So
those. So I can explain the difference between, oh, why they don't know. Is that what you're asking?
yes,
Yeah,
yes, that would be
yeah.
awesome.
the ones who do not know, again, it's really that, again, that state of emotional intensity plays a really big role in it. Those who do not know that they're dead, there is a traumatic or a very strong emotional um, reason for it. Could be
Mm,
that they died of sadness. The sadness was so intense that
mhm,
it wiped out their memory of the process that happens when you die. The emotion is so strong that it wipes that knowledge out of their consciousness. And
mhm.
it's, if you want, is that that sadness, that emotion is so bright, so big, so strong that it pushes away the other knowledge and that they already have, that every soul has. And you have to remind them of that they're in a state of sadness or anger. They have to be acknowledged. They really want to be acknowledged. You cannot, you have to acknowledge where they are. They want to be heard. Same as we do when we're human beings living our normal lives. We want to be heard. We want to be acknowledged,
Right.
seen. And you have to acknowledge that. And it
I
takes a
see.
little bit of practice to do it with a ghost because they could be temperamental and throw tantrums at you, just like a human being would do.
Yeah.
And once they have that, again, they find a space of peace and calm, now they remember. Automatically, they remember. Because the other knowledge now can find space to manifest itself in their consciousness.
Yeah, because I know in just because these shows really fascinate me, and yeah, whether they're real or not, as far as the show, but some of them I'm like, yeah, that's pretty intense. And so so some of them when they don't know, is it is it a lot of times if they've been murdered because they weren't sick or they didn't have a traumatic accident, they may not have seen it come or whatever. Is that more of a situation where they may feel like they're still around and then they're telling the people to get out, like they don't understand why they're walking around asking where, like, I'm right here, like get out, or something like that. I mean, I always wondered about those because there's some that are really nice and there's some that are just really very angry.
Absolutely. No, you're totally right, Susan. Um, and talking about murders, I had a session last week with a beautiful woman from Moreno, Nevada, and we did it remotely. And her partner, she's an older lady in her 60s, and she had a partner also in it. So it's an older couple that have a long life together. The poor man got murdered in Mexico.
Oh gosh.
They had like a little house in Mexico that they were visiting every now and then, and he got murdered in Mexico while his beloved was not there. She was doing something else. I think she was on a little trip not far from their city. She was just going to come back the next day. And the day where she was not in the house, two people came and murdered her beloved. I discovered that by connecting with the soul of her beloved who got murdered. And he told me, he said, he knew, first of all, that he was murdered because they discovered the scene was a really bloody scene when she came back. They didn't find the body, but they find pretty much the blood spattered all over and bullet holes also in the
Oh
house. They knew that
gosh.
something really bad had happened, but she didn't know what happened to the body. The body was never found.
Hmm.
Uh, so I was able to help her connect with her beloved. And he really got murdered in their house. And the two perpetrators took the body and threw it somewhere in the hills in Mexico in the deserts. And he was still trying to walk his way back to her. All this, and that happened 2 years ago.
Oh
He was
wow.
just wandering in the hills, not understanding what had happened to him, trying to find his way back to her. But he was not
Oh.
going in a circle, not really making it back to her. And that's because he was murdered in a very violent and unexpected way.
So they really feel the physical, like they don't even know. I mean, they really feel like physical, or is it just an altered state that they're just kind of confused? I mean, that's just fascinating. And because he's wandering around, but you would think that, okay, I'm physical. I'm a physical being. I have not been I have not passed away. I mean, how would you not know? Like, I mean, are they eating? I mean, like, I mean, it's, you would think, I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but, I guess there's no time. They don't have any concept of time in this, in this state, right?
That's the
So,
key. Yes. They don't have a concept of time. For him, it was happened yesterday. He asked, how long ago did that happen? That very case I was just telling you. And
yeah.
we told him, it's almost 2 years. He's like, I feel like it happened yesterday. So when you go into that limbo state or in between realms, time is completely different than how we
Mm,
experience it here. You could have been spending 2 years walking around. It feels like you just started to walk to them.
hmm.
And the more confusion and trauma you have in that state as that the ghost has when he find themselves like that, the harder it is for them to have a clear sense of the location that they're in and how much time has lapsed since they died. They really also lose that concept.
It seems like they're also in a very
Yes,
confused state, like just very
yes,
bewildered
yes.
and not sure what's going on. So I suppose it would be strange if they're just all of a sudden, oh, here come pops in Didier. And they're like, wait,
Yes.
who are you? Like, like, how do you appear to them? I wonder. Are you just show up in the forest and say, hey, just want to let you know, by the way, I mean, do you ever get that, that
Oh, yeah.
understanding from them? Like where you're coming from?
Yes, and this is where again I was telling my this is a mission. I think to me, this one is we call it a gift because whenever you're given that gift, like whichever way it comes to you through ancestral, you know, or traditions, or your grandmother had it, or your mom, or your father, or your grandfather had it, and you have it too. So it's in your blood. There's a lot of good things that come along with that. It's truly a gift where when you go into these outer realms, and really what it is, my consciousness goes into that realm, and when I'm there, I see everything they see. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it's like I'm walking alongside. So I found him in the hills of somewhere in the hills of Mexico, as he was walking down a dirt road, and I was like, "Whoa, what are you doing here?" And he looks at me, he's like, "Who are
Like,
you?"
where'd you come
And
from?
yeah,
I've been
where do you
alone
come
for
from?
like all
Um,
afternoon, and here you are. How'd
but
you get here?
yeah, a lot of time when they look back at me, they see me as a light. They can see me like you see me, but there's a lot of light around me, which makes them think that I'm some kind of an angel of some sort. So
Oh,
usually are more um, they're not scared usually when I appear because that's the point. I want to be able to help them. I don't want to be, some freaky apparition in the middle of their confusion.
yeah.
So there is like this soft light that has been given to me as part of my being a ghost whisperer, so that when I make a contact with a ghost, they already have a sense of safety. They're like, oh, he's not the demon who's here to drag my soul to, the far sides of hell.
Yeah.
Something like that. So they rarely get scared by my presence, but they're still confused. So now it's up to me with their beloved one to say, hey, I'm here on behalf of, whoever I'm doing the session for. Sometimes it's just me. I just find them. That's it. There's nobody else there that they will relate to that is there. It's just me. And I'm like, I'm here to help you understand what happened to you. And most of them are calm enough to pay attention. And I think there's an energetic transfer that happens. If it
Mm.
is, because I feel them right away, whatever they're feeling, if it is pain or rage, whatever emotional state, I feel it automatically. And I'm like, whoa, okay. I know what's happening. Or I'm starting to feel what you're going through here. But then the same thing happens in reverse. Like there is a part of me that has a very loving, caring, and soothing and helping vibration that also goes inside them. So we kind of exchanging energy for a while until we find a happy medium where now the conversation can begin and we can have a normal, mostly normal conversation. So that's
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. So if he was murdered and then they took his body, where does the spirit start to leave? I mean, if he was murdered in the house, you would think it would be leaving there.
Yes. Yes.
So,
He
or maybe he didn't die yet.
yeah, he didn't die automatically. He was really what I saw was that he was not so they started hurting him with a machete, first of all. Really bad. He started murdering someone. He started with a freaking machete, and then they finished him off with a gun. So they started with the machete, and then they shot him. So, but once he got struck by the machete, he lost consciousness. It was a very violent, blunt force trauma hit. He lost
Mm-hmm.
consciousness, and he got shot while he was unconscious. I saw the scenes in
Okay.
front of me. So somehow he was still alive, though he was, deadly wounded. He was still alive, and they dragged his body to. I think at some point his real final breath happened sometime when he was somewhere on some road, which would not make sense because if that's exactly where he was wandering on the road, dirt
Mm-hmm.
road. So I do believe that's possibly the area where his actual last breath was taken.
Now, would you be able to assist in other situations like this when somebody's been missing and then they were murdered and maybe they have not crossed over and their family and investigators are trying to locate their body? Are you able to connect with them and see if you can at least try to pinpoint where their body is?
Yes. Yes, it is possible. I haven't been asked yet by law enforcement or family members to pinpoint a location. And this woman, actually, I was asking her, and she said she doesn't want to find the body anymore because it happened 2 years ago, and
Well, yeah.
she was still under the trauma. So she didn't make that request. But I saw the place where he was, and upon request, I can actually see more details. If there is a road sign, I would see the road sign. If there is crossing, I would see the crossing. If there's a particular rock formation, I would see it, or a particular
Mm,
tree, I can see the detail. Once I make the connection with the goats, wherever they are, I will see the details of what's around them. If they're where their body was left, then I will also see that place.
now I have to ask the burning question that everybody's gonna know. If they can ask Uncle Joe, where the treasure was buried. Is that something that can happen? I mean, has that happened? Has there been anything where you've been able to gain specific information that the people who were living needed to know that kind of died with the
Right?
person that had passed away?
Yeah, so far nobody asked me, which is interesting, but technically I don't see why I wouldn't be able to if they're willing. So
Yeah.
for example, if it's if it's a knowledge that the ghost has, they have to be willing to share it. If it's the location, that's different because I will see where they are. But if it's knowledge that they have, I cannot intrude into their memory. That's
Mm.
again another no-no of freedom of choice and respect of sovereignty of being.
That is interesting to ask, though, that there are some rules there.
Oh, yes,
Well, I have to
absolutely.
go into that next.
Yes. So, upon these two rules that I just showed you or talked about, if they decide to share the information, then I will hear the information and I will share with their family members or
Mm,
relatives or any person who are interested. And they have to tell me. It has to be a decision that they make. But yes,
okay.
there are rules. There are rules.
That's really interesting. So what are some other rules that can't be crossed or just can't happen? It's just not it's not, I can't say physically possible, I guess. Maybe there's a better word for it, but that yeah, this can't happen, this can happen, or we're not allowed to do this. What are some of the things that might be interesting for the listeners to know?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Um, so so free will really is the number one, like prime directive of our creation. Free will. It doesn't matter. which entity, which person. Free will is a rule for everyone. Everybody has free will. So anything that impedes free will is a no-no. Forcing somebody to do things. I'll give you an example. So some people use the gift that I have for not so noble purposes.
Oh.
Um, I had a case where the ghost reached out to me while he was still being kept hostage by some kind of wizard, like some wizard that pretty much really stole the soul, made it its own. I'm gonna steal your soul, and you're gonna serve. Your soul is gonna serve me. For some odd reason, that's the situation that soul was in. They were pretty much in service of some kind of wizard, somebody who had abilities, possibly the same as I or even more. Um, so he was in violation of prime directive here. But that's really, when you really think about it, how I was asking myself, why is it that he's given free range to break the prime directive and still live to tell and enjoy, the fruits of his misdemeanor? Um, and what I got from my guides, because I'm helped by a lot of guys, like Kuan Yin is right there behind me. She's from Asia, beautiful goddess, and very powerful, also very loving. And she helped me a lot with my ghost stuff. Whenever I run into a situation that I do not understand, I ask for advice. And she's really good at giving me advice. And she said, well, there's a part of the ghost that actually agreed to this. Because the other wizard, or let's call it the bad guy, would really not have been able to fully do it. Unlike there's a part of her that either consciously or unconsciously agreed to it. So maybe she was bribed or coerced in some form, like if you don't do that, I'm going to hurt your family, I'm going to hurt your child. There was some type of deal that was made at a time where she actually had to give her consent for this, binding to take place. And once it's done, it's still her free will. Even if you do it out of a duress, it's still free will. You have chosen to put yourself in to put yourself in that duress situation or agreement, and it's still your free will. So that's the power that wizard had. It hadn't found a way to make her do what she was doing. So I was like, but then if it's her free will, who am I to stop this? And then the goddess, so Kuan Yin, said, but ask your ghost, is she still willing to do it? And the ghost said no. But she said, are my children safe? And truly enough, the goddess said, yes, they are. You don't have to do it anymore. They are safe. So the hostage, or the guy who was keeping her hostage, didn't tell her that her kids were safe. And because time and space works differently once you're on that other side, I don't think she had the ability to assert that for herself. So she got
Okay.
help from me and the goddess to know that now she can reclaim her free will to be let go from that bondage. And then she reclaimed it. Wizard was not so happy, but
Well, so
that's the
she
rule.
then went back to
Now
her
that
body
she
when
knew
Abe.
that her free,
I'm
oh, she
sorry.
had been dead a long time ago. She was a
Oh,
soul. She was a ghost. He was dead. He took her soul. So there was an agreement that she will die, give him her soul in
oh,
exchange for not hurting her family, her children. So the
okay.
woman, the ghost, was dead. She was dead long ago. But she didn't know that now she could actually change the deal. She had the power to change the agreement. And we had to remind her of that. So I did it with the help of my guide. So you have the power to change the agreement, and you can be freed and go into the light. And she's exactly what she did. The wizard could not do a single thing at that point. Was free to go on.
Oh, okay. I get it. When you said hostage, I thought they were still alive and somebody took their soul. I was totally like,
Hostages,
wow.
hostages exist in the ghost world too. Yes, they
Okay.
do.
Gosh.
It's a
Um,
crazy world.
so how would that happen where someone would get in that situation? I mean, what would cause you to become a hostage? Like, how would anybody want to avoid doing that again? I mean, not again, but
Falling into a situation like that, right? again, it's free will, free will, free will, free will. It all comes down to the same thing. And the choices that we make are so important. Choices. And you know, for
I mean,
the yeah,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
is it happening when they're passing and something wants to take their soul,
It's possible.
or is it something that happened before they passed away? I don't understand that part. And maybe that's something where some that religion I grew up in, when you pass away, you go to heaven or you go to hell. So is it that kind of what they're trying to explain um at all? I mean, is that
Oh, good point. Yeah, well, there is also that possibility of going into a place that's very dark and very, very scary for a very long time. You may call it hell, or or some other different religions again have names for it, right?
Mhm.
Yes, that's a possibility too. Um, so the most extreme case is really self-sacrifice, which is really one. I think that's the case that I ran into. Is that lady? I think she was still alive, and the wizard was still alive. But the wizard had powers, and he wanted to use her soul to do things. I don't know exactly what those things were, but because remember, I told you,
Like
souls have.
possession?
He was not gonna possess her. He was gonna manipulate her to do his bidding,
Oh.
like increasing his ability to influence the world by using spirits of goats that are now in service to him or her.
Oh, okay, okay.
That kind of where it's like having your own minions, right? So
Mm.
whichever that wizard was, the reason why he did it, I do not know. But he was trying to increase his ability to do magic, possibly black magic, I mean dark magic here, by
Mm.
using the energy force of the soul. And you could actually use soul's energies. That's really, it's all energy, it's all vibrations, it's all electromagnetic and frequencies. So you can other and collect that and make it more potent. You can, it's like accumulating more power, really, like spiritual potency.
Mhm.
But in this case, it was used for some really not so beneficial means or ways or goals. So he probably asked her to give her a life.
Oh,
That
okay.
woman agreed to let go of her own life and have her soul be in service to him to
Uh,
protect her family members.
I see. I
And that's a
see.
really dark, nasty deal to make.
Oh, yeah. But at least you know that there's people like you that can help them get out of that negative space and be able to finally cross over and go where we're supposed to go, which is a better
Yes,
place.
yes.
All right. So the other question I have so many. So be ready.
Yeah.
So I've heard where someone might pass away and then they kind of join somebody who's already alive. Like they call it a walk-in, right?
Yes.
Can you explain that and how that, I guess, happens, and how would somebody know they have a walk-in,
Oh,
and
yeah.
how to release a walk-in if they don't want that walk-in?
Yes. I've experienced myself walk-ins on a few occasions. Oh,
Oh gosh.
yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Walk-ins. So okay. So for the walk-ins is also a common, a possible transition that happens more often than we realize.
Really?
And there is, um, the reason for that, why walk-ins happen, is that kind of idea of possession, right? Where more than one soul could be present in the same body. It is actually, yes, it's a possibility. Our physical bodies have the capacity to handle a lot of energy,
Mm,
spiritual wise, spiritual energy. So another soul could actually borrow your body. So there are a few levels of that. It could be you could both be aware of each other. That's one way. A lot of people who channel, that's really what happens. Their consciousness merges for a while with another consciousness, and they speak on behalf of that consciousness. So they're both there. They occupy the same body. There are times where it's more extreme, where the initial occupant of the body gets kicked completely out, and then a new soul comes in. At that point, you're like floating somewhere in the ether, watching your body being driven by somebody else. That's also a very possible thing. Um,
And before you go on to explain what I had asked you originally, just a sidebar. So this person, they got kicked out. So did they have to wait all that time until either that soul who's possessing their body either leaves and so they can come back, or until their body dies and then, right?
oh,
And then they, because they can't cross over when their body's still.
exactly. Yes. Yes. It could be for any duration of time, which is very, very scary. It could be for a short amount of time. What's most common, what I've witnessed at least most commonly is a short amount of time, maybe for 10 minutes, maybe an hour, sometimes a day. You out of your body for a day and somebody else is in there for a day. These are the most common scenarios where there is some kind of an agreement. Again, there's always agreements involved in this, and they could be conscious or subconscious agreements where you let another soul use your body for a predefined amount of time. When that time arrives, that's the deal. The soul, the visitor soul has to go out, and you come back into your body. And it could be any period of time based on the agreement that you have with the other.
Mm.
Walk-ins is a bit different, where it's a true, an extreme walk-in is a complete exchange, where not only do you decide that your body is going to be occupied by another soul, but you decide that you don't want to come back, and you have to don't want to come back, and you say, I just want to move on. Usually, when for that to happen, as you said, you have to die. So a lot of walk-ins happen during NDE, near-death experiences,
Mm.
because that's the body has to go through its process. You have to die, release that body before it deteriorates, and all another soul can come in and reanimates the body, but it's no longer the same soul that's inside. Different person. One who was there, who died, moved on, usually crosses over into the light, and you have a new occupant now running this body, another soul.
Now, when you're observing that, with, like, if we were to observe somebody who's had a walk-in, um, do you think that could be the reason why some people, um, like maybe a suicide came out of the woodwork, like they would not be the type of person that would commit suicide, but that could be it. Something else came in and caused them to do that. I mean, I know that's probably a very controversial topic, and I'm sorry if this upsets anybody, but it's just, you wonder, because people are very hurt when a friend or family member have done that to themselves, when they think that would never happen. And then, I mean, is that could be an explanation as to why?
Absolutely. This is a very possible scenario. And here's the kicker, which is very scary when you think about it. Um, when you go to sleep every night, um, there is always that possibility that could happen to you. Well, in your sleep, your consciousness actually leaves your body. And there is always a chance that you could die in your sleep, and walk-ins come in, takes over your body, wakes up normally. Everybody thinks, oh, it's the same person who went to bed that's now waking up. And it's actually a different person. A lot of that happens through sleep, during sleep time. Because when you go to sleep, the veil gets so thin between those realms I was talking about. You go into that zone where you can actually move across realms very easily when you go to sleep, when you're in deep sleep. Um, and yes, walk-ins can happen like that, where somebody went to sleep, and it could be somebody who was so tired of this life, was like, I'm done. And they may not necessarily be the ones who committed the suicide initially. They may have desired it, they may have longed for it, but they were not able to do it themselves. And they will just leave the body. They will check out. And another soul comes in. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a volunteer for that. I'm going to be the one who actually commits the suicide on your body, using your body.
Oh my gosh, that makes a lot of sense. Um, in some circumstances. Um, Oh, I gotta process that one. So when someone also has like multiple personalities, is that walk-ins or is that something else?
Yes. Yes, this is that's a big one. Multiple personalities is a a very good sign of multiple occupants in the same body. Yeah. Multiple
Okay.
souls living, sharing the same body, taking turns, dating. And it's very common also, more than we realize. In a lot of the shamanic traditions, that's how they will identify things like schizophrenia or bipolarity and all those more clinically Western world clinically
Mm-hmm.
labeled conditions will be treated very differently by shamanic societies because they understand the possibility of that, precisely that, where somebody, again, a body could have multiple occupants and there will be souls, different souls taking turns. Um, and they need to go to the root of it. They will not necessarily call it a disease. Like the tradition I come from, we're not going to call that a disease. We're going to say, oh, this person is very likely called to become a shaman or a healer or some type of uh, um, a prophet, somebody who can see the future. Because when your body, that particular body has this many occupants going through, it really means that all those occupants really want to work together.
Mm,
Hasn't been fully resolved how that would happen. So the shamans will take a person like that and then train them to understand each soul that's going to take turn. All of them will understand that they're part of a community of souls.
okay.
So they don't get confused each time they show up in the body and forgot what's the last thing they were doing. It's like, oh, I was in the kitchen. Now I find myself in the garden. How did I get here? Oh, because somebody else walked the body from here to there. So they
Mm-hmm.
will teach them to understand those that there are multiple occupants. They will help this community of souls have some type of agreement on what is the purpose of us being in that body. And it's going to be almost like a debate among all those different souls to come up to understanding their purpose. And then the shaman will train that person on how to facilitate the occupancy of the body based on what each soul that occupies it is meant to do with it. And it's a very, very profound shamanic practice that I've learned from my tradition, and I also know that other places on earth do similar things.
So is there any way if someone's like, okay, the community has decided that they don't want somebody part of the community, can they identify someone and extract them as one of the personalities?
Yes, they can take votes and can be kicked out of the island. Yes, yes, they do. Yes,
Oh my gosh.
yes,
Just like this show, huh? They
yes.
get voted off.
Get voted out of the island. Yes.
Take your torch and leave.
Please think.
Um,
Go on.
so, now what's fascinating with that phenomenon is how some personalities may have biological differences than the other personality. Like maybe one is diabetic and one is not, or one is blind and one is not. That's what's fascinating. And so how does your physical body change just because you have a different soul being coming forward at that time?
So I'm gonna bring another rule. This is a beautiful rule. This is the hermetic rule. As within, so without, as above, so below. This is another universal rule of of our creation. Um, you will manifest on the outside what's already inside you. So if somebody has a soul that has an energy vibration that supports blindness, for example, or maybe it was its choice to be blind and not be able to see because then they see other things. We know that blind people have very extremely developed other senses. So
Mm-hmm.
that was possibly that soul's choice. I was like, I'm not going to see lights like people do, but I'm going to have all the other senses incredibly efficient. So that soul comes in and it manifests out. from that very same identity that it's carrying. You know, as above, so below, as below, so above. It goes both directions. It's not just one way. Whatever comes inside you will come out and manifest outside in your body and in your surroundings.
They can only change so much. I mean, it can't change what you look like or change your, you can't be a man and then be a woman. I suppose your personality could be, but it's not going to change your physical
Well,
appearance.
You heard about shifting?
Or shape shifting, I guess.
If it
Okay, so let's go into that. So tell us about that.
oh, brother. That's the extreme manifestation of that rule.
I would
You
say
know, as
so.
above, so below, as below, so above, as within, so without. If
Mm.
there is a very strong agreement, again, it's all agreements. This is incredible how much of all this is based on agreement. Like, you know,
Before you're even born, I mean, is that
oh,
something that it's okay? Okay.
bring it with you. From the time you're born, some of those agreements are ancestral. They carry through generations and generations.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so there is, and it's known in my tradition, we have we call them the leopard people, where a shaman could turn himself into a leopard. And yeah, you see a man, the first you then look again and there's a leopard instead of the guy. He's like, whoa, what happened to the dude? Well, this is an extreme case. The spirit of the leopard took over the body and manifested itself on the outside, fully, completely, with no restraint. And that was the agreement. The agreement was you take over everything without a single piece of my human form left. And the leopard comes through, and the man turns into a leopard. And when the leopard is done doing what he's doing, he lives again without a single trace of its essence back to the other soul, who is a human soul, and that body turns back into a human. Yes, it happens. In Africa, in Latin America, very common. There are stories of that all over the world of shape shifters. Native Americans have that also in their culture. And it's exactly that. It's that soul agreement. It could be the soul of an animal and the soul of a human being making a contract and a deal. And your
Okay.
body could completely change.
Wow.
Completely.
That that's fascinating. I mean, yeah, that would have to be like extreme cases, obviously. It's not something you see. Most people don't see that every day and
Yeah,
don't believe that
that's
sort of
that's
thing. But there's
pretty secret stuff.
so many more things that are unexplained that um and it fascinates me. Like for instance, people who I'm going to go for a walk in the forest by myself and then they end up somewhere else like impossible, like it could be a toddler that just walks off and they're like, well, he was just here 5 minutes ago and they cannot find him anywhere, and then he ends up like 7 miles away just fine.
Yeah, and then
Like how I mean, maybe we're going off a topic that's not really
oh,
related here, but
oh,
maybe I don't know,
oh,
can you shed light if you can?
absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, hey, that's again, the I was saying, the realms are real. I mean, again, you have to be able to. The problem is that sometimes people want to manifest around inside the other realm. Like, yeah, that doesn't really work that way. You have to be within the realm to manifest, to experience the rules of that realm.
Okay.
If you think of the realm in between that I talked about, where time and space kind of vanish,
Yeah.
it's a very interesting place. It's a place where you could be anywhere, anytime. You could be, and it doesn't even have to be here on Earth. You could be on the moon if you want, some other planets if you want. If you have the ability to do those travels, your consciousness will travel to those places. Your body won't, because your body belongs to this realm. You're not
Mm-hmm.
going to take your body with you. It's your consciousness that's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And you could, and once you go into that, into those realms, normally you're supposed to come back to the body where the body was left when you left it. But it gets even weirder when, again, the energy that you get when you go to the other side, when you cross, sometimes it can be so strong, and that depends on whatever gift is being given to you. You could
Mhm.
actually bend space and time, where you could move from one place to the other. Some it's been recorded of biolocations and things of that nature, where a same person could be in two places. So, like, how is that possible? Well, they have the ability to bend space and time. It was given as a gift to them, where they could be the that now we're going now from not just being into a different realm, but to actually changing the shape of one realm using powers that are usually part of a different realm. So once you, because the power to be in any place, any time belongs to that in between, like limbo place.
Mhm.
Ours is not supposed to be like that. But now you find yourself as a consciousness that has the ability to recreate in this realm some of the properties of the limbo realm, where now the same person can be in two places at the same time, which quantum, mechanics has demonstrated is a very, very, very good possibility. They've done experiments that, where entanglement shows you that two particles separated by an infinite distance between them can change simultaneously, faster than the speed of light, which seems to be breaking another law of the physical world. It happens. So there are a few scientific experiments that have actually supported this idea of bilocation. It is even weirder when you go through time. You could actually find yourself being moved in the future or the past if you have that ability, where the same body who's here in the present finds itself walking in the future or going into the past, because it's using the properties of the limbo universe or the limbo realm to do that. And that's where all the magic and the magicians, a lot, and the real ones, I'm not talking about, tricky musicians, the real musicians, and sometimes the wizards and the witches. And sometimes it doesn't have to be not even anything that has a bit of a negative connotation. Sometimes saints have done that within the church, through the history of Christianity, where they've actually done physical miracles. How is that possible? It's a miracle. Yes, it's not supposed to happen in each realm because they're using properties of a different realm to manifest things in another realm. And
Okay.
yeah, and that's how those things.
Yeah, because I just started binge watching some shows that were talking about a lot of people who become missing in national forests, and their clothes will be neatly folded, but then they're gone. I'm like, who folded the clothes? But they're gone. Or they find them,
Yeah.
um they're gone, but all of their stuff is just neatly piled, and wait, like really far away from where they, there was going to be no way they would be able to get to a certain point, or it was just too treacherous, or not in that amount of time. So, but who is folding their clothes? I was like, what's,
Yes, they're
you know,
using the power of manifestation. This is opening another chapter, which is manifestation. Same thing as within, so is that. And as above, so below. We are so powerful creatures, and all of us are. It's not that when I was talking about people who have the abilities to do that, they are the people who actually have embraced that power. That every single human being has that same power. There was no discrimination that God gave more power to one another. It's how do you accept, open yourself and actually discipline yourself to practice those powers that are available to every human being. So some people have the power of manifestation. They can manifest things without actually having to go through a regular process of assembly or movement and motions. They just think it, desire it, and boom, it's right there. We
or
do
they
have.
don't even know. I guess that's what's crazy is there's so many people that have just gone missing. Their body was never found. But it's always like a national forest or something. And
Portals. National forests are portals. They are very powerful ancient lands and grounds that
mm,
have, they're like, the idea of a wormhole or a portal or a black hole, it's that kind of stuff where the land itself carries an energy vibration that have a very particular signature. That's why we have sacred sites around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of very prominent monuments of specific religious heritage are built on those sacred sites for a reason, because that site has a very specific energy that allows things like miracles to happen. National, some remote forests or some mountains they call sacred forests, and some of, for example, we have sacred forests in my tradition where all kinds of magical things happen.
Mm.
Giants could walk into there. When you go in there, you can see mermaids and fairies and flying dragons through that magical forest, because that land has a very special energy that crosses, that really bans completely all the rules of physics that we know normally know in this world. They are very sacred spaces and places that have a very specific energy signature that allows these things to happen. So if a child walks into a forest that has one of these places, some very ancient, a lot of times these are very ancient places, very sacred places that back in time, like thousands of years ago, were places of worship and practices, so shamanic practices. And so you're not here in this century, you walk through that place, you don't understand that it's a place like that, and boom, all of a sudden you disappear, poof, because you went through a portal.
How can you protect yourself from that?
Oh,
I mean,
yes. You need vision. You need vision. You need vision for knowing and feeling places like that. Because the energy is pretty strong. Somebody who, like like me, you put me in a place like that, I'm gonna be like buzzing like there is no tomorrow. Because I will like, oh, this is not an ordinary place.
mm,
There's all kinds of shenanigans happening in here. And I will tell people around myself, around me, to not go there, because I have the ability to sense that, because I've been trained to be more sensitive to the subtle nature of these energies.
right.
You have to be trained to be able to recognize that. Or you can use talismans, things like crystals
Okay.
or specific plants that within their construct have the ability to trigger an alarm of some sort, where some crystal, for example, that will be sensitive to a portal that will take you God knows where, and you have that crystal as a necklace, as a bracelet, it will make you sick to your stomach to tell you don't go there. So you don't
Oh,
yourself, the crystal recognizes the frequency and then influences your biology, tell your body this is not an ordinary place.
or
And you,
heightens your intuition, kind of.
it heightens your intuition.
Mm.
And you're like, I don't feel right about this or that place or that. Yeah. So those talismans or tools can be used for things like that.
Oh, that would be good to know. So if you're going to a national forest, you might want to grab a crystal and stick it in your
Yes.
pocket or
First pocket. Yeah. Yeah. I've had,
wow.
I have my I have this crystal. To tell you a true story, this this is a crystal that I carry with me all the time, and it was one of my teachers who told me carry this you all the time, because here's one thing that happened to me. Last year I went to drop my daughter at one morning. She was 8. Dropped her at school, and I'm driving back home to be ready to start my work day. And I'm driving on the highway, and I don't know which part of the highway I was crossing. Boom, I was gone for 2 seconds. I was not in my body. I was not in a vehicle. I was not on the highway. I was somewhere else. And it was about a 2 second. And when I was driving about 60 miles an hour on the highway, I went through some portal. I don't know what it was, why it was there, how it got there. And I come back what was really 2 seconds later, and I don't even recognize where I'm at anymore. I'm like, what is this place? What am I holding on to? And it took me about 5 seconds. Luckily, it was a stretch on the highway. I didn't have to, nobody was trying to do something funky around me, or I would have had an accident. And it took me about 5 to 10 seconds to remember, oh my God, I'm in a human body. I'm holding on to the wheels, and I'm driving down the highway, and I just dropped my daughter at school. It took me a while because I got taken to another place. I don't know how, why the timing was what it was. And I realized I was so scared because I was like, oh my God, what if I had gotten into an accident? So as I got home, I called my teacher. I'm like, something really weird happened to me. She's like, yes, Didier, did you have your magnetite? stone on you. I'm like, no. He says, didn't I tell you to keep it with you all the time? Because whatever was going through me at the time when she was training me, she says, I'm very sensitive to portals. I'll be sucked in and out because she was helping me develop and open myself to all kinds of abilities. And she
Yeah.
says, don't leave the house without this guy. Otherwise, you're going to be sucked into portals. And it's
Mm.
happened on the highway. Real story.
You know, there have been a few times, especially when I'm driving, and I think probably when you are driving, you're almost in a semi-trance type of situation. And there have
Yes.
been times where I, I'm going to somewhere where I always know where I'm going. And I find myself going the wrong way. And then I'm like, why am I going this way? This is not how we go. And I'm like, how did I get here? And I'm just thinking it's something I did I was stupid, I'm like, well, how could I just not go the way I normally go? Why am I going this way? How did I get over here? Yeah. Kind of
Portals,
makes sense.
they're
And you
real.
and you have a lot of people who, they have these experiences when they're on the road, either um they are, I guess, like you have experienced, to go through a portal and, time changes or something, that's fascinating. I always wondered how people could leave and disappear one place and then end up
Yeah.
somewhere else. And they can't even explain it. And nobody else can explain it, or they don't want to believe that person, that they just think that they left and wanted to start a new life. Again, I guess some people do remember it and some people completely have amnesia
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I had the amnesia. I didn't know what happened to me for like 2 seconds where I was gone. I know something happened, but I had no memory. And it took me a while to even remember that I was when I came back that I was a human being again, and I was driving a vehicle, and I was somewhere on the highway in Southern California. It took me a while to remember that. That knowledge was gone.
So, so as a ghost whisperer, you help your main target is helping someone who has passed away but has not crossed over. So how do you come to know that there's a need there? Like, um, how does it come to your knowledge that your help is needed?
Very good. Yes, so there are a few processes. If it comes from a request, like somebody reaches out to me and say, "Hey, I'm not sure if my loved ones who died has crossed over or not," then we need to assert that. We need to determine, okay, we know they died, but have they crossed over? So I can have a session where we will go to that, and the beginning of the session is about finding out where are they, in which realm they are. Luckily, again, because of my sensitivity to the subtleties of those realms, I recognize very clearly the angelic realm, the source energy. Um, when source, if an angel was to come close to me, I will feel it immediately because I recognize the vibration, the energy, the emotions that they carry is very specific. When somebody crosses over, they will carry that same energy, that same light. Yeah, we can
Mm,
call it light. That angelic light, they have it once they cross over. They're like angels. Um, so if I call upon that person to manifest themselves to me, I will feel what light they're carrying. If they don't have that light, I know that they're not there. It's period.
oh, okay, okay.
It's very specific. I will know that they haven't crossed over. I don't feel that light. I'll feel something different. A lot of times I'll feel some very strong emotions that are not so pleasant most of the time. Well, they could be pleasant, but it's not the light. It's not the light. So I will know that. So that's one way for me to know, oh, this person needs to cross over. And the other way is when ghosts actually come and visit me without me asking anybody to come and visit me, they just decide to show up. Um, and they have interesting ways to do that. The one they like the most is actually tapping on my shoulder or holding my hand. And I'm like, oh, come on, I'm in the middle of work here. That will pretty much fool me. It's like, yep, we need
Now, can you
your
make an
attention.
appointment? Wow.
Oh, that's exactly what I say. Yes, yes. I tell them we're gonna have to make an appointment here. I'm busy. I had to set rules. Otherwise, I would have gone crazy because I have two kids. I have a wife. Still have a normal job besides this, like a more normal, what we call normal job, kind of corporate like. Then this is my passion. It's also my calling. So at one point, that's what I'm gonna be doing. I'm happy for that to happen one day. But otherwise, I needed to set rules. So I had to write a contract. And
Wow.
again, my teacher, because I was telling her, I'm going crazy. How am I going to deal with all those girls that show up randomly in the middle of my workday? Sometimes I'm in a meeting and they show up. I'm like, goodness gracious. I have to pretend that I'm not feeling anything because I'm on a Zoom talking to my coworkers. And she said, oh, that's normal because you're being developed. You're being, so you don't know how to,
You're
control
in the
your,
directory and
yeah,
everybody knows your number.
yeah. So let's go visit it. Maybe he's not as busy as the other one. So he said, okay, gotta set your rules and talk to, souls, the angels, and all the guides to set the rules. When they're allowed to show up and touch you or interact with you, and when the ceremonies will take place. So I had to set all that. I read my contract from top to bottom. Like, this is how you manifest to me. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. You're allowed to, maybe touch me, you can appear, you can talk to me softly, no loud screaming and yelling, no banging on the doors or playing with the window shades. A lot of time they will do that. They'll just start playing with my windows and I'm like, oh, no, that's distracting. So I set up the rules and I said the time. This is every Saturday morning, for example, from this time to this time is when we're gonna do the ceremony, and then you're welcome to come back at that time and we're gonna go through the process. And they obey. Because again, on their side, they don't have time and space. They don't really see that. So for them,
Hmm.
when I just say that, it's like snap of a finger later when they show up at the ceremony. For me, I just went through 2 weeks of work and caring for my kids and my wife. But for them, they don't see that.
So you basically just have to have open office hours then for them and say, okay, I opened my door now. You can, line up now and I'll take your number.
Yes.
Um, my gosh. So, well, ghosts don't pay too much, I'm sure. So you probably don't have too much of office time. But if somebody maybe feels like they're getting visited, or they're curious, they just are worried about a family member that they feel maybe their passing was abrupt or unexpected or traumatic in any way. Maybe they could reach out to you and um, see how maybe you might be able to help them. um, And what are some experiences that you've had that really tend to manifest physically for you around this? Like when you've, I mean, I know candle was another example, but what are some
Okay.
more?
Oh my God. I'm gonna tell you this one. This is one of my best favorite story that happened maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago. Um, so so when I do my ceremony, my window crossing, I call it the window ceremony because hey, the crossing to the light. I picture the light as a window and I just walk through it or a door, either way. But I call it the window. That's the name that I gave to my ceremony. So I was doing one about a month and a half ago. And I had a list. I think I had about seven ghosts that they made appointment. They came to me before, and I said, "You come back on that day. I'll tell you that I'm ready, and you'll hear my voice, so you see my light, whatever you see me, and you'll know that it's time to do it." So the seven of them showed up, and I go sequentially. I say, "Okay, you go first," because I have my list. Who's there. I call upon which one is coming next, and they'll know which one they are. They come forth. So I went through about four of them, and it was very nice. I have a little musical background, like little angelic music, is a harp, like something very soft and calm and peaceful. And I have my list. I have my songs, and it goes for 1 hour, no more than that. So I have cued my angelic music, and then I go to that young girl who died of COVID during the pandemic, and then I see her come forth, and I said, "Okay, are you ready to cross?" And she says, "I got one request." And I'm like, "Okay, what can I do for you before you cross?" She said she wants to visit the Great Wall of China. That was her request. It's like, before I go, I want to be at the Great Wall of China. So I'm like, okay. So she's probably in her mid-20s, like a young woman, Caucasian, from the United States, some state there, on the East Coast, actually. And I said, okay, so let's together. I was like, let's work together. Let's imagine ourselves on the Great Wall of China. And she says, yes, yes, take me there. So I close my eyes and it's like movie time. Boom. I find myself on the Great Wall of China. She's standing next to me. And then my angelic music turns from the angelic music into some rave dance that college kids will be dancing um, to until drinking and partying until the morning comes up. And I'm like, so I'm standing on the Great Wall of China. My eyes are closed, and I hear the different music. This is not the angelic music, and I'm like, whoa, who changed my soundtrack? And I hear the ghost lady say, "Go with me on this one." And I'm like, okay, what are we
She's like,
supposed to do? They just,
"Nt."
yeah, she said, just party with me. Just party with me. That's my last request. So I'm like, oh my God, this is very unconventional. And I'm like, okay, let's just do it. So we were like dancing on the Great Wall of China to that rave music for about 1 or 2 minutes. And then she said, okay, that's it, I'm ready. I can go. And the music stops and it turns back to my angelic music. And I was like, holy God, what?
Wow.
That?
She's got some personality, which a younger, was it a younger? Yeah.
She died of COVID. Yeah.
Oh
So
gosh.
she wanted to have that great body and great wall of China before crossing over. I'm like, yeah, well, we did it. And then she crossed just fine. So things like that, random things like that could happen to me. That was one of the most recent ones.
Now you have of course my friend Lois is your wife, and you have children, and so has any of your experiences kind of um I guess been observed by your family, things that like maybe you're at the dinner table and someone's knocking on your door going, now, like, is it Saturday yet? Is it Saturday yet? Do they also see some of these manifestations?
Yes. Yes, there are a few of them. And one of them that the witness, which was very, very interesting. We were sitting at the living room watching a funny movie, family time. It was an evening, weekend. And everybody's watching the movie. It's a funny story, we're laughing. And all of a sudden, I just freeze, like, because that was a powerful interaction there. Tapped on my shoulder and I completely froze. And then Lois was sitting next to me. And so I was laughing and the laugh stopped. And I was like frozen in time. Um, and and I saw myself moving around the family room, floating above it, seeing myself down, sitting next to us, and the kids watching, still doing their thing. And it felt to me like it was like 20 seconds or so of time that passed. And then I came and I was like, oh boy, I gotta come back into my body here. This is a very unconventional way to get my attention. And then boom, I come back into my body and I look at Lois, I was like, how long was I gone? She's like, about 2 seconds, and you were frozen for 2 seconds. I thought you'd stop breathing or you were dead and but frozen. I'm like, wow, it's like I was floating around the house for 20 seconds or so. She says, no, it was just 2 seconds. And I realized what had just happened. I'm like, okay, a contact was made that was in an unconventional way. I should have stated none of that kind of in my contract. It was not stated in the contract. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to upgrade my contract for things like that not to happen.
Gotta add that one to the list.
I had that
Oh
one to my list.
my goodness. So are there any other symptoms, anomalies that Western world has put to explain some of these things, like bipolar and multi personalities? They're just thinking it's more of a psychological phenomenon. um what are some of the other things that people may have experienced that is more of a like a contract or more of a consciousness phenomenon.
Yes, yes. Oh boy. Yes. Oh, so many things. Well, let's pick one that's very common and a very also controversial. This is the topic of depression. I
Okay.
mean, like, our generation, I think we're one of the most depressed generation of American history has known. I know the Great Depression was pretty bad. Okay, that one put aside. In the recent decades, I think my generation, I'm born in the 70s, we are pretty damn well mitigated as a generation with all kinds of weird things coming our way. And depression has been so common. I've experienced it. My wife has experienced it. And when we started, because I started going deeper into my spiritual training and awakening, I could call that, like I started taking it seriously to bring my gifts online and I
Mhm.
understand. I touched the topic of depression. I'm like, why do I feel depressed? Why is depression such a common occurrence, right? And and my wife was suffering from that even more than I was. So both she and I were depressed couple. We're like, goodness gracious, we're not gonna make it as a couple. And if we stay that depressed, we gotta figure out what the hell is going on with this.
It can
Um,
perpetuate. It
oh
can
yeah,
kind of just grow, especially when you have
yeah.
two people. Yeah.
It was tough. It was tough, so tough. And um, and I think Lois kind of um, found the answer before I did, and she started calling that shadow. Said, well, this whole depression thing, I think it's like shadow. And she had started hearing about that from other spiritual teachers as well as sometimes the meditation community. There's this concept of shadow work. What is shadow work? They call it dark night of the soul. It's like those moments in your life where you're feeling like dead inside or you
Mm-hmm.
feel you don't belong. There are all kinds of weird sensations. And sometimes it's called depression. You're
Mm-hmm.
depressed. And she figured out that it's actually not as bad as we think it is. It's not something necessarily that we enjoy, but it's something that we require, we need to actually spiritually grow. And the idea was that it's within the shadow when we go into those places of darkness and sadness and aloneness and loneliness that we actually can go back in touch with our very own inner child. It's like a part of our inner child that is begging for attention and for healing. And it manifests like that. And rather than
Makes
trying to
sense.
suppress the depression, we actually have to explore it. We have to go deeper. We have to question its origin. Why am I feeling depressed? What is the part of me that is trying to come out, that is trying to express itself, manifest as depression? And we've both done some incredible work in that, in deal with that. A lot of it has to do with we discovered something called somatic therapy, where it's almost like you're not being hypnotized, but it's called like a guided exploration of your body sensations, where you try to shut down your brains. Like don't try to think, shut down the brain, and usually somebody helps you do that. You don't do it by yourself. There's a trained person where you get out of your mind and get into your body, and you let your body express its trauma, and some of the traumas are from childhood. That's what I experienced. That's my wife experienced. We're experiencing childhood traumas as depression. And the body, our body, we're holding on to that trauma deep within ourselves. And we needed to find a way to get there, recognize it, like embrace that inner child that got beaten up, that got yelled at, that was dismissed by his parents or his classmates or his siblings, whatever it was, and then let that child express itself. A lot of time it's kind of freaky. They'll be crying, they'll be screaming, they'll be shaking, and you just let your body release that. Release, let go of it. She did it. I did it for many months. She did it for many months. And it helped bring down the depression. from that shadow that was living inside us just needed a way to be seen and be processed. And it was an incredibly powerful exercise. There's nothing fun about it, I can tell you. Only the aftermath is fun. While you're going through it, you're like hell. You're like, I was crying like a baby. The kids heard me from the other side. I had to explain to them what I was going through. Like, daddy was crying because, I was trying to heal myself. And what time I was a child too. And this happened to me. And I just had that memory coming back. And I felt what I was feeling then. And I needed to cry to let it go. So yeah, and it's not a fun place to be. It's not an empowering super dad moment, right? But I needed to go through that. And so depression, which is a very typical condition, is actually a blessing if we know really how to look at it and how to explore its true origins.
Right. I mean, we all know that an injury is painful, but also the healing of it. There's a process that's painful, but it's definitely necessary. And if you kind of embrace it and expect it and understand that this is something you'll be experiencing, but there is, you'll be moving towards a positive outcome, especially if you set an intention.
Yes, the intention is really to heal and grow and be whole again. Really, that's really what it is. Be whole again.
Right, right. So this has been absolutely fascinating. And I always like to have my guests express their favorite poem, or not poem, but quote rather. And so I was going to know what your favorite quote is.
Yes, yes. So my favorite quote is from the poet Rumi, um, and it says that you are not just a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a single drop. And it's so profound when you think about it.
That is, I mean, that takes you a while to wrap your head around that sometimes, but it really makes sense if you really think about it long enough.
Yes.
Yeah, if you think about everything we've talked about, you definitely will get it and think, yeah, that does make a little bit more sense. And the other thing too is we just don't know a lot. I mean, you've expressed a lot of things that we've all been blind to, because we're in just the one dimension, the fourth dimension, and there's so much more
So much.
that we won't know, or maybe know fully. I mean, we're just experiencing our dimension for the moment, right? And we just have to understand that there's a lot out there that we just don't know. We just don't know. And to
Oh my gosh.
enjoy what we can enjoy, just so because my listeners are here to understand how to be happier, how to live a more full and balanced and abundant life, what would be your advice, knowing what you know, as to what would be a good way to improve your happiness in this lifetime?
Oh, absolutely.
And not fear death, not fear other realms, but how can we be a little bit more happier in our current situation, being here
Absolutely.
as a
Yes.
human on earth?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I have this belief also that we already, happiness is something that we already have. We all
Yes.
are born with happiness. When you think of a baby, it's all there.
Hmm.
It's there. We are born with it. We just forget that we have it as we grow up. And truly, it's about reclaiming the happiness that you already have. And
Hmm.
that's, a shift for me in my spiritual journey. Is like, it's not like I'm trying to find happiness outside of me. There's this goal out there that I have to figure out how to grab and orchestrate my life to be able to find it. I already have it. I had it
Hmm.
all along. I was born with it.
Yes.
Matter of reclaiming it. And the more people realize, or I realize that happiness is already inside me. I just got to find a way to let it shine, to let it come back to the surface. I already have my happiness.
Yeah.
I don't need another person to be happy.
Mm-mm.
I am happiness. I was born with happiness. And I would just want to bring it out again. And that's that inner journey of rediscovering oneself, loving oneself, forgiving oneself, that lets that happiness shine again. Because we've always had it, and we actually always will have it. We just forget every night.
Exactly. And that's why you can create happy now.
You got it.
So if sometimes you kind of are happy most of the time, but since we are human, we sometimes can just fall into a less happy state. What's your happy hack to kind of get back into your connection, your happy now state that you desire? What's one of your go-tos when
Oh,
something might have set you back?
yes. No, it's to me, it's really putting things in perspective by being in nature. We have this, the world that we live in is a magical place. We just take time to look at it. It's the eyes of a child. Look at the world with the eye of a child. I would go to a garden, botanical garden, or a beautiful garden where there's not too many activities and people, so I can have a quiet space. So I'll go walk into a gentle forest. That's safe, right? We don't want to go to the ones that have the portals. But
But if
like,
you do, take your little crystal.
yeah, get the crystal so you can be warm. And then just hear the sounds of nature. I hear the bird. I will sit down. I have a botanical garden here in Vista. It's the city where I live in San Diego County. And I will just, as much as I can, maybe 3, 4 times a week, I'll go there, sit down in a quiet spot, little bench, and surrounded by the beautiful birds that are singing all the time, beautiful plants, vegetation, yeah, the perfumes of the flowers, and I just let it in, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm proud of this. I
Mhm.
have the grace, the blessing of being able to experience this life and all the beauty that it comes with. And look at the sky, look at the clouds again with the eyes of a child and dream of shapes. Oh, this is a dragon, this is a flower, this is a bird. Just clouds moving up above, feeling the breeze, the wind, on my face, on my clothes, and closing my eyes and just feeling the wind and the breeze and breathing it in, that breath of life. I'm like, it's free. I
Just
don't have to
be.
pay. It's right
Yeah.
there.
Yes. Just
And that
be.
that always brings me back from any kind of dark time, difficult time, or mental struggle that I'm in. Just that connection to nature and just making myself a witness of the beauty of nature. That does it for me.
That
Without
does. That's definitely a wonderful method. Um yeah, but and anybody that doesn't work for um you really have to just stop and I guess kind of like stop and smell the roses. You have to just stop and realize where you are, let go of everything and be where you are. And that's all that is you and nature at that moment. And realize that really life, and this is a little profound, so stay with me here, is meaningless because the only meaning that you go through life is the ones you've assigned to something. And you can have it useful for you or not. And you can adopt other people's beliefs and maybe they don't serve you and you don't have to keep them. You just change the meaning, right? And there might be some things that you might have experienced from, life experiences, but that doesn't mean it's always going to happen that way. It may have developed a belief, but if it's continuing not to serve you, you're able to change it, just reframe the meaning so that it does serve you. So awesome. Well, I have been totally just mesmerized by all of your wisdom in so many different areas. There's so much more that you know that I didn't realize you knew. So I just kept digging and digging. So I hope you don't mind.
Oh,
But I want to thank you so much for joining us. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to let the listeners know what you have going, how they can get in touch with you, what do you offer. So I'll let you have it and you can kind of let them know where to find you and everything.
absolutely. So I'll share my website with you, Susan, and you can have
And
it.
I'll put it
Yeah.
right here.
So you can go to my website and you can book sessions with me for, I have this 20-minute free consultation that I offer to people to discover any kind of need or curiosity that they have about, again, this afterlife and communicating with the departed, dearly beloved departed. And I have a consultation, and then we can determine from that consultation if we're going to have a session with them, a full-blown session where we actually make contact.
Okay. Yes.
There's that. And another thing that I do also, which is, you can see behind me, I've got a few paintings. One of the gifts that came along with my ability to be a ghost whisperer was to start painting. So I do paintings of departed people that you love, that you have a particular image of them or picture of them that you want a painting of. I will paint, and usually in the painting they will carry some a message for you that I will tap into, and it will come through the painting. So it all depends on who I'm painting and for whom the painting is for. But
Oh, that's
that's also
amazing.
another service that I offer alongside with just also contacting them and helping them cross over if they need to.
But you also can, I mean, whether they've crossed over or not, I mean, if they've already crossed
Yes,
over,
I'll
but you
answer that
still want
question.
to have a time to maybe talk to someone that just want to connect with um whether it's curiosity or just need some closure.
Absolutely, that's part of the service. During the section, we'll do what's needed, what's or what's required or what's desired from both sides. The person who's crossed over, as well as their beloved who are still here in this realm with us.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm sure that the listeners are going to be really excited to maybe have a moment to whether they want to know more about what we just discussed today, or they want, specific individual help with a loved one that had passed. So that'd be great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time with me today. And um, we'll definitely, we'd love to have you on the show again. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Create Happy Now podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, and if you are watching on YouTube, hit that notification bell. If you have a topic to suggest, please leave a comment below. Catch the Create Happy Now podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, Audible, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Listen Notes, and Podchaser. Check out other YouTube videos on the Create Happy Now YouTube channel. And if you want more, check down below for resources, courses, and events, or go to www.createhappynow.com.